Hi, everyone. I'm Abigail. This is AJ, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
Today we are joined by award-winning author Elizabeth Winthrop.
We normally tell people what books the author has written, but since Miss Winthrop has written over 60, we would run out of time.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm delighted to be with you. Good to meet you.
How much of what you do starts with the words "what if"?
Well, a lot. A lot starts with what if, because when you're writing a novel and you have to make everything up, all the characters, etc. So once I get the characters in my head, I then ask myself, well, what if he jumped off that roof? Would he fly? Would he not fly? Do I want him to be magic? Do I not want him to be magic? What if William froze somebody and turned them to lead? So I ask myself that question all the time.
Did you write a lot as a kid?
Did I write a lot as a kid? Yeah, good question. So my father's a writer. He was a famous writer. And every day he would sit in his office and I would hear him. We didn't have computers back then. We had typewriters. And so I'd hear this bang, bang, bang. And I thought, well, he doesn't even have to go to an office. This looks pretty easy. Maybe I'll try writing. But I also love to tell stories. So very early on, I have 5 brothers, no sisters. So very early on, I started writing in a diary. And I kept it really carefully hidden because I didn't want my brothers to read it. And then my first book I ever wrote was called The Mice Who Lived in the White House, because I lived in Washington, D.C. And I took it in those days, again, we didn't have computers. So I hand wrote it in a notebook and I took it on the bus, the school bus, and I left it on the bus and it got lost. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to be a writer. It's too easy to lose the story. I'm going to be a tennis player. So I tried to be a really good tennis player, but I wasn't good enough. So I went back to writing.
Daughter of Spies is different than your other books. What inspired you to write it?
That's a great idea. Great question again. So yes, Daughter of Spies is a memoir. It's the story of my childhood. It's the story of what happened to my parents. They fell in love in England during a war. My mother went through lots of bombings. She was a spy. She worked for a place called MI5. My father parachuted behind enemy lines during the war. So I really wanted to tell their story, but I also wanted to tell about my childhood growing up. So it's the first time I've ever done anything like that.
When you are writing a book, how much do you have to change your mindset when writing for each character in the book?
How much do I change my mind? Well, I'll tell you that I don't outline. So the characters are the ones who tell me what they're going to do. And sometimes I have to sit there and I will send a character down a path and the character will say to me, I don't want to be here. This isn't right for me. I'm not a person who rides a dragon. They scare me to death. No, back it up here. And so if I listen to the characters, that's when I have to change my mind. And the more I listen to them, the better I know them. So towards the end of the book, I don't have to switch too much. They're telling me where they're going. And that's the best time when I'm writing a book, is when they're in charge.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
Oh, geez, it's different for every book. All right now, you may have heard of my books, The Castle in the Attic and The Battle for the Castle. So I've written a prequel, hasn't been published yet. I don't have a title for it. And now I'm writing the 4th book. And someone just asked me, how far have you gotten? And I know the beginning and I know the end, but I don't know the middle. I know that William is going to defeat the villain in the end of this book. And it's the 4th and final book in the series. But how I'm going to get there, I'm not sure. So in this book, as I say, I know the beginning and the end, but I don't know the middle. Sometimes I know the beginning and the middle, and I don't know where the book's going to go. And in the prequel, I knew the beginning and I knew the middle, but I didn't know the end. So every book is different.
It's about a time when you were doing something and you noticed someone or something and thought, I need to put that in a book.
All the time. I'm an eavesdropper. So I always say all writers are spies. So they listen to conversations and they watch people doing things, and they think, I think as a writer, other people probably don't think this, but as a writer, I think that would make a great scene in a book. And when I'm around my grandchildren, I have 2 new grandchildren who are 3 and 2. I hear them talking and I think about writing picture books again for little kids, which I haven't done in a long time. But yes, my ears are always open. They're writers' ears. So I listen to everything around me. It's what makes it fun.
We have interviewed a number of authors who've had books banned.
This means in some parts of the country, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see people like themselves represented in books.
Can you give us your thoughts on this?
I should have worn my shirt. I have a shirt that has banned books on the fronts, and it says on the bottom, I'm with the band, meaning not BAND, but BANNED. I think it's terrible that books are being banned. Mine have not yet been banned, but my friend Judy Bloom, her books are always banned. And a number of other friends are having their books banned, and kids should have access to every book. They may not like it. They may throw it across the room. They may not want to read it. They don't have to. I always say, if you don't agree with what a book says, don't read it. You don't have to. But you shouldn't ban a book for an entire state, city, library, kids' classroom. I think it's very, very upsetting.
What writers had the most influence on your work?
I would say the first one is C.S. Lewis, the Narnia books. That inspired my Castle books in a lot of ways. There was a book, my mother was British, so I read British books a lot. And I loved a woman named Enid Blyton. She wrote The Island of Adventure, The Castle of Adventure. She had 4 kids in it. I loved those books. So they were very influential. I think To Kill a Mockingbird taught me a lot about writing and how to weave characters together and how to surprise the reader. In that book, I had no idea what was going to happen with Boo Radley and that he would turn out to be the real hero. So those, and one other is a woman named Nancy Willard, who wrote a book called Things Invisible to See. I loved that book. I'm always reading, always.
What advice do you have for kids who want to write?
I would say the first thing is you have to be a reader. If you want to be a writer, you have to like to read, because otherwise, sort of what's the point? You're telling someone else, you're writing for someone else, but you're not going to do it yourself. Plus, reading teaches you lots and lots about character and plot and what makes you interested and what doesn't. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is to keep a journal. Don't show it to anybody. Put your feelings in it. Not just, I have a stupid journal from the 4th grade. It said, went to school, hated math class, came home. It didn't really tell me anything. You have to put down, went to school, Jerry sat next to me in math class and he kept pulling my hair. He kept pinging things at me and I really didn't like it. And I kicked him in the foot. Make it emotional. That's what drives books. Those are the books you want to read. It's the ones that have emotions. So that's what I would say, diary with emotions.
Finally, it's time for Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
No. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Number 1. What is your favorite phrase to use?
That said, comma.
What is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Art, painting.
What is your go-to snack food?
Yogurt, maple yogurt.
What is your favorite book growing up?
The ones I've talked about and The Adventures of Dr. Dolittle.
If you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
Japan.
What if you could have one superpower? What would it be?
To see inside of people's heads.
What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh my heavens. Little Lulu.
What is your favorite rainy day activity?
Reading.
If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Oh, this one's hard. 3 dinner guests. Who would they be? Emily Dickinson, the poet. Arthur Ashe, the tennis player. And President Theodore Roosevelt, because I'm related to him and I would like to meet him.
What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
That was my father. I wrote a line where I said, Emily walked across the room, grabbed the doorknob, pulled the door open, walked through the door and outside. And my father said, unless Emily crawls bleeding from the room, I suggest you say Emily left the room. We all leave a room in approximately the same way. So as a writer, I put a big sign above my desk that said, Emily left the room. Keep it simple.
You rocked the Turbo 10. That was our fastest yet. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Thank you, guys.